The radar screen was empty. American controllers stared at the glowing displays, confident that the sky was clear. Their F-15 Eagles, the most powerful fighters in the world, were patrolling high above the Nevada desert. They were the kings of the air, designed to see everything and kill anything from miles away. Then, the call came over the radio. Tornadoes in the target zone. Weapons released. It was too late. The British jets had already struck. They had slipped through the most advanced air defense network on Earth, dropped their simulated bombs, and vanished into the canyons before the Americans even realized they were there. How did a jet that everyone laughed at as slow, ugly bomber from the Cold War manage to humble the mighty U.S. Air Force? Welcome to Hidden Valor. This is the story of the Panavia Tornado, born from fear. To understand this shock, you first have to understand why the tornado was built. It wasn't designed for glory. It wasn't built to look cool at air shows or to dogfight with nimble fighters. It was born out of fear. During the Cold War, British planners knew that if World War III started, Soviet missiles and radars would make flying high a suicide mission. Any jet that tried to fly over Europe at altitude would be shot down in seconds. So, the Royal Air Force RAF came up with a brutal, simple solution. If you can't fly high, fly low. Really low. The tornado's DNA was built around a specific kind of flying called terrain following. Its secret weapon wasn't a missile or a gun. It was a special radar in its nose that scanned the ground ahead. This radar talked directly to the flight controls, allowing the jet to fly automatically at 100 feet, sometimes even 50 feet off the ground, at nearly the speed of sound. While American pilots were trained to fly high and use long-range missiles, British pilots were training to fly in the dirt. They spent thousands of hours screaming through the Scottish Highlands and German valleys, trusting their lives to a computer that kept them from smashing into the mountains. To the Americans, this seemed crazy. It seemed outdated. They called the tornado a bomb truck, heavy, slow, and easy to kill. But at Red Flag, the world's premier air combat exercise, they were about to learn how wrong they were. The invisible attack. When the RAF arrived in Nevada for Red Flag, the American F-15 pilots expected an easy win. Their strategy was simple. Use their powerful radars to spot the British jets from far away, dive down, and kill them before they got close. But as the exercise began, the American radar screens started acting strange. Blips would appear for a second, then disappear. Ghosts. Glitches. The Americans were confused. What they didn't realize was that the tornadoes were using the desert itself as a weapon. At ultra-low altitudes, radar struggles, the ground reflects radio waves, creating clutter. Hills, rocks, and heat waves confuse the sensors. The tornado crews knew this perfectly. They didn't fly in straight lines. They snaked through dry riverbeds. They hid behind canyon walls. They flew so low that they were literally invisible to the radars looking down from above. Inside the British cockpits, the mood was calm. No panic, no shouting, just the quiet voice of the navigator and the hum of the terrain-flowing radar. They were flying blind, trusting their instruments, skimming past rock walls with only meters to spare. High above, the American F-15s were frustrated. They knew something was down there, but they couldn't lock onto it. Contact lost. Clutter. By the time the Americans finally got a solid read, it was over. The tornadoes had already crossed the target line, dropped their simulated payloads, and were burning for home, leaving nothing but dust in their wake. Chaos in the cockpit, the confusion for the American pilots was total. Their doctrine, their entire way of fighting assumed they would see the enemy first, but the tornadoes had flipped the script. They arrived before they were detected. The British pilots exploited every weakness in the American plan. If the F-15s stayed high, they couldn't see through the ground clutter. If they dove low to hunt, they lost their advantage and got sucked into the canyons, where the tornadoes were waiting. In one mission, a pair of F-15s rushed into a valley to intercept a contact, only to find empty air. Meanwhile, two tornadoes roared through a parallel canyon just a mile away, completely unseen, and destroyed their targets. It wasn't a fair fight. It was a magic trick. The tornadoes didn't win with speed. They won with timing. They knew exactly when the American radar sweeps would happen, and they ducked into the shadows just as the beams passed over. The debrief The humiliation wasn't public. No scores were posted on the news. But inside the briefing rooms, the tension was thick. American instructors replayed the tapes. They watched as the outdated British jets penetrated their defenses again and again. "They aren't fighting our jets," one American pilot admitted. "They're fighting the landscape." The British crews sat quietly. There was no boasting. They just nodded. For years, they had been told their jet was a relic. Too slow. Too heavy. Now, they had proved that slow and heavy could still win if you had nerves of steel. They joked among themselves. The Americans weren't trained to fight the ground. We were. The lesson was clear. Combat isn't about looking cool. It's about the mission. The F-15 was a gladiator. The Tornado was an assassin. The gladiator wants a fight in the arena. The assassin just wants to kill the target and leave. A legacy of hidden valor. By the second week of the exercise, the Americans stopped laughing. They started respecting the ghost runners. They changed their tactics. They sent fighters lower. They tried to set up barriers. But the British adapted too. They flew even more unpredictable routes. They used misdirection, sending one jet up to draw attention while the main force slipped by below. It was a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. When Red Flag ended, the Tornado's reputation was transformed forever. It was no longer a bomb truck. It was a predator that no radar could fully cage. The lesson of the Tornado is terrifyingly simple. The most dangerous aircraft is E&D, the one that fights you. It's the one that never has to. The RF Tornado never chased glory. It chased the mission through valleys, under radar, and into the heart of the enemy. It proved that you don't need expensive stealth coatings to be invisible. You just need the discipline to live in the dirt. While the world looked up, the Tornado owned the ground, and that is the definition of hidden valor. Subscribe for more stories of the machines that rewrote history.